about a week ago, I made the mistake of mentioning phyla, and I decided to refer to my list of phyla. One phyla is a phylum. Now, years ago, I made this list of the 25 phyla of the animal kingdom. These are the divisions between the different animal life forms. And I looked at the list and realised that it was very much out of date. So, having started a family tree of the phyla to show you how they interrelated and where they came from, I decided to completely revisit it and spend a lot of time on Wikipedia and thumbing through books, and have revised the list. Now, all life, as we know it, as scientists know it, links back to a single type of organism, and from that branched different kingdoms. There are even things beyond the kingdoms, but I'm going to avoid those at the moment. We've got the plant kingdom, we've got the fungi kingdom, and we have the animal kingdom. Those are the macroscopic ones, the ones that we can actually see. And those are then divided into these phyla, which are the main groupings of the animal kingdom. So here we have our list. So just to give you an idea of the differences that we will find, we have let's say we've got the sponges type of animal at one end, and at the other end we've got the mollusks, which include snails and bivalves. I'll come back to that in a moment. And in between there's all the other groups, including ourselves and including things like spiders and flies. So, but for the time being, let's look at this again. So say you find something underneath a stone, and you perhaps know its species, or you want to know its species. So the species is the exact type of animal that is. It is within a genus, which is in a family, which is in an order, which is in a class, which is in a phylum. And this sheet, which is available to you, you can use to follow that path from through each group. So, for instance, I've put it on here that we have in the mollusk phylum, we have the cephalopods, which includes nautiluses, cuttlefish, squid, and octopuses. In the octopuses, we have the Eliodonidae family, of which our Curly, making a sudden introduction here, is a member, and he's Eliodon serosa. So you can follow that path. So let's have a look now at. It's far easier to look at it rather than for me to try and explain it. So now let's have a look. I've made the family tree now is much smaller on this piece of paper so that we can put some things in these spaces. So I'm going to avoid the placozoans because they're microscopic, and move straight on to the porifera, which is the sponges. And here from our local beach we have a sponge. It's falling apart. Couldn't go to the beach to find a fresh piece. But this is a rock boring sponge. So sponges are animals, and they live in quite diverse forms. After that on the list I've got the catenophores, which includes things called sea cones. Cone jellies is probably the best way to describe them, and sea gooseberries, which are quite commonly washed up on the seashore, but obviously I don't have one of those handy. So I'm going to move on quickly to things that look like them but are not, which is the cnidarians, which includes jellyfish. And I just have to have handy dried jellyfish on a piece of driftwood. But it also includes things like sea anemones, and corals are in that group. Moving on, but onto a different branch, we're now moving into the bilateria group, which includes the chordates. And amongst the chordates are things called tunicates, sea squirts, which look a little bit anemone-like but with two openings, but also all the vertebrates, which includes rabbits. There's a rabbit skull. It includes fish. It includes the birds singing around, and unfortunately me as well, and you. So that's all in one group, which starts that's this group here, the chordates. So that kind of shows how small we are, doesn't it, in the grand scheme of things. Now, not distantly related to us on this family tree, on the same branch eventually, are the echinoderms, which means spiny skins, and that includes things like that, the sea potato, the sea urchin, the starfish, these things. This is a fossil sea lily. And I'm going to dodge a couple of these because they're either microscopic or rarely heard of. So let's move on now to the tardigrades, are also called water bears, and they're tiny little invertebrates that look like bears with 6 legs. They're beautiful little things. I've never seen a live one, I've only seen pictures, but they're quite closely related to the arthropods, which is a huge group, the biggest of all. And it includes the insects, it includes crabs, and it also includes things like barnacles, goose barnacles, and the spiders. Big group that. That brings us pretty much to all the things we call worms, and they are not closely related at all, but amongst them are things like, these are marine keel worms, which make tubes to live in. And it was possibly a worm that made a kind of tube like that gradually evolved into snails that they could carry the tubes around with them. And it includes what we're all familiar with, earthworms. But all those groups are called worms. Worm shape is probably the commonest shape in the animal kingdom, even though the insects are the biggest group of all.